So this guitar came to me where the owner was asking me to pull out the electronics, the P rails, and move them to a custom SG that he had. He was going to retire this guitar. And I was asking him why, and he told me it developed some buzzing, and all attempts to get rid of the buzzing weren't successful. And I looked at the frets, and sure enough, there was a ton of fret wear. And he had mentioned that this has been his main guitar for like 20 years. He kind of grew up with it. So I'm thinking to myself, it's obviously it has sentimental value to him, even though it's not one of his higher end guitars. I said, listen, before you retire it, why don't you let me look and see if I can level and recrown the frets for you. If we can get it buzz free, you get some more life out of it. He said, sure, take a look at it. So I did. And when it came to me, the action was super high. It was almost 6/64ths on the low E string and 8/64ths on the high E, which is kind of funny, but that's what it was. That's measuring at the top of the 12th fret to the bottom of the strings. He uses 11s through 48s. So I just, I removed the string. What I thought was a back bow, the neck wasn't flattening out. In fact, it wasn't a back bow. It's got the dreaded S curve, where there was a hump at, like, let's say frets 2 and 3, and then it dips down to a natural relief and then ramped up at the heel. So I was like, holy cow, I've heard about that issue, I've never seen it before. So I tried to adjust the truss rod in both directions to see if I could do anything, and there was no way to remove that, let's call it a natural relief. All it would do was make the S curve more pronounced. So I put the strings back on, and I thought to myself, let me see what this truss rod will do under tension. And I was able to get about a 0.016 neck relief, measured from the, with a capo on the first fret, measured from the top of the 9th fret to the bottom of the E string, the low E string. So I said, whoa, there's some potential there. I could at least get that much, it seems like acceptable relief, before that S curve would become pronounced. But I was thinking, how in the world am I going to level these frets? Maybe I'll just try to recrown them and see if I get lucky, kind of thing. And then I saw this invention on YouTube, quite a few videos for this Fret Maestro, where you basically set the height of each fret using the fretboard as the what's the word I'm looking for? The jumping off point. I don't know. It's not the right word, but whatever. So I thought, all right, well, if I can get a 0.016 relief, if I save as much fret material as possible on the 9th fret, use that as my start, whatever that works out to be, apply that same height to all the other frets. In my mind, that's equivalent to having a flat fretboard where you've used a sanding beam, crowned everything, and then set your 0.016 relief. Of course, you probably wouldn't. You would only do 0.01, but in this case, I have no choice. That's the best I could get before that S curve would develop. And I bought the crowning file, the finishing file, the 300 grit, and of course it comes with the main file. So I started working on it, and I was having some difficulties or challenges with it, and I shot the owner of Six Stringers an email, and he got back to me fairly quickly. I mean, I would say within an hour or two, and eventually said, hey, give me a call and we'll walk through it. So I was talking to him, and he gave me some tips, and most of the tips are already in his videos, but it was kind of good to hear what his current process is. And when I got off the phone with him, I changed the process a little bit. I started with the crowning file to knock the edges off the frets, and then I went to the main file. And then I went back to the crowning file and then used the finish file. And because these frets were in such bad shape, not only were there a lot of low spots and divots, somebody had taken the straight file to try to get rid of the buzz, and there was a lot of tool marks and just huge flat areas across a couple of the frets. So I did end up using some 1500 sandpaper after the finishing file to try to smooth those divots out that were left and get rid of the tool marks, because I wanted to save as much fret material under that 9th fret so I would still be able to work with the built-in relief, if you will, of the 0.016. if all that makes sense. But in theory, I thought it was sounded like it was going to work. So I figured I would do the first pass of not taking anything off or just barely off the 9th fret, use that as my start, if you will, apply that to all the frets and see where I end up. And I was shocked to find out, or surprised, that the guitar immediately started playing better. There was no fret buzz with that high action, and that was encouraging to me, even though I knew there was still a little bit of a hump down on, the 2nd and 3rd frets here. So I figured I was going to have to eyeball those and kind of file them down a little shallower because of the hump in the neck, But what ended up happening is I was able to eventually drop the action at the 12th fret on the low E to about 4.5 64ths. And I did go as low as 3 64ths on the E, but I settled back at 4. So it's a little more even feeling across the fretboard. And even though the fret rocker does show a little bit of a rock at the low frets, it's not creating a buzz. And I figured, you know what, let me just stop there because of the way this neck is shaped. I didn't want to fall down a rabbit hole trying to chase a fret rocker. You know what I mean? If it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing. And now I've got an acceptable relief still. It's still at the 0.016, measuring, with the capo on the 1st fret, holding down the 22nd fret, and then measuring from the top of the 9th fret to the bottom of the low E. It's 0.016. And the fret buzz is gone. These were really buzzy on the low notes. And the intonation is like spot on from, let's say, fret 1. A couple of I think the B and the E were slightly sharp on the 1st fretted note, which, you could address with the nut. But in this example, I decided to just leave it because it was close enough, just to see what this neck is going to do over time when it settles in with the new tension and the new action. Then we'll see if we're going to adjust the nut later. But for right now, it's intonating great. So I think this little tool here actually saved the day. I don't know how else I would have done this. I've heard about this problem with the S curves on guitar necks. I've just never seen it before. And this saved the day, I think. And the frets feel great, and I couldn't be happier. So we'll see how this thing works on good necks. Normal necks, we'll see what it does, but I can say it for this one, it worked out really well.